Okay.
Good. Okay. I am here with Rosee in Austria. Rosee is from the UK, from England, right? But you
That's
live in
right. Yeah.
Austria. Yeah.
Even also.
And you're currently attending level 1
Mm-hmm.
at our international dog trainer school. That's how I got to know you. And then I realized that you are also working with dogs. You've been working with dogs for quite some time already, and you're specializing in separation anxiety. So if you can tell a little bit more about yourself and your background and working with dogs and what you do.
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me. It's really, really nice to be here. And yeah, I came to Austria quite a while back because at that point I was a theatre director still. That was my sort of, I became a professor here and taught acting. And then at that point I got my first dog for a long time, and I had he was a whippet, and we had a lot of temperament and was quite feisty. And I found myself being very well, partly badly advised, but also very in a sort of very contradictory way. And I felt very split between want to do the best for my dog and being urged to be tougher on him and all that. So at some point, when we had a very nasty episode, I thought, I have to study this myself. This cannot be. Also because I grew up in the theatre with a very famous director who found a way of working with actors without ever telling them what to do.
Ah.
He always talked about, what do we want to tell? What story do we want to tell, and how are we going to tell it together? He was a great master of his art, but he did it by giving people the space that they could manage with their skill set. So that's how I grew up. So it never occurred to me when I had a dog that the way to go about it is to train, sit, and stay and do these things, which my dog was like, well, we've just done that. So I set off to find something better, and I found this holistic way of working, which I find again with you, and it's a great achievement, what you're building up, and I'm so pleased to be part of this. And then, of course, I started to realize how many people were struggling, and as you do, you kind of slip into helping other people. So I've actually been working now as a canine behaviorist for 13 years. And along the way, I adopted a greyhound, Stevie, from the racetrack. And I'd never heard of separation anxiety then, but he actually had what is true separation anxiety, which is the fear or even the phobia of being separated from one particular person. That was me. He just decided that he was safe with me. Yeah. And he was very nice to other people, and he knew other people gradually, but he did not want to stay with them, and he'd never really been in a flat before, so he didn't know what a door was. So if he got upset, he would try to get out of the window and bring the curtains down, and this was quite alarming. I mean, I'd never heard of any of this before.
And this is how you discovered that something obviously wasn't, wasn't good when you were leaving the house.
Yeah, I discovered that he couldn't cope on his own without me, right, at first. So I dealt with that quite naturally, actually. I mean, it didn't occur to me to leave him alone until he could cope with that. So I've never really understood how people can be advised to let dogs cry it out, and anyway, in his case, the distraction was such that it's just not an option. Yeah. So I know firsthand the challenge of trying to help a dog like that, who literally even can't stay with somebody else. Yeah. Luckily, he had been used to traveling to races in van, and he would sleep in the van. That was a whole nother adventure because it was an incredibly cold winter, and I had him wrapped up in a fleece greyhound jacket, and over that a deerhound jacket, so he didn't freeze to death. And I'm very privileged. I was very privileged to be able to organize my own teaching a lot of, so I would block it in 2 hours and have to go down and get him out. And so I know what a burden it is emotionally and physically to help a dog like that. Yeah. Luckily, most dogs can stay with other people. We call it then is more isolation distress or confinement, or the fear of being confined, which now seems to me actually quite rational. But that's how I
That
found
makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. That if it's separation anxiety, it's related to another person. Or in my case, I had a dog that had separation anxiety when some of the other dogs left the house. Not people, but dogs.
Yeah.
And isolation is when they're very fearful of being home alone, right?
And I think people were not very aware of this as a problem at all until about 2012, as far as I know. I think it was when John Bradshaw did a very wide-ranging study, and he recorded dogs at home and showed the recordings to their owners, and they were amazed and sometimes absolutely devastated to find out what their dogs were going through, because it wasn't always apparent. When you come back, sometimes dogs greet you quite normally. For example, I had a trainer friend of mine said that she had a dog in training for many years, or they doing fun stuff with them. And they set up a camera for a reason that had nothing to do with the dog. And they discovered that the dog was pacing all day when the people were out, around the sitting room, up the stairs, around the landing, down the stairs, around the sitting room, obsessively for 8 hours a day. I mean, 8 hours is too long to be left, but had developed obsessive behaviors. So it was John Bradshaw who I think really drew the attention to a wide audience that this is a very severe welfare issue. And we know now that anything up to 55% of domestic dogs will have some kind of separation-related fear or behavior in the course of their lives. Yeah? And one thing that I think was really interesting, he said to us, he said in this study, we have taken dogs into our lives for thousands and thousands of years. We've selected them because they want to be with us. We are the social partner number one. And they have also entrusted us with their survival. And if you look at it like that, being shut in, if you're a hunting and foraging animal, to be shut in and not to know when somebody's coming back must be really alarming. Yeah. So he said it is a matter of welfare priority that dogs have a chance to learn that people will come back. And I think I've been thinking about this in the run-up to talking to you, because I was thinking that has somehow got translated to dogs have to learn to be on their own.
Yeah.
But it's slightly different. It says the onus is on us to teach dogs that we will come back. Yeah. That's what's
so true. But it also, you just said it's that, so that means that more than half of our dogs are struggling with this at one point or another in some form. It's
Well,
a
there
problem.
is a study to say something between 25% and 50% will have some kind of separation issue during the course of their lives. Yeah, because there are different causes.
So we really need to pay much more attention to this when we get them as a puppy, from the puppy already.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we should prioritize it like toilet training with that importance. However, it doesn't mean what a lot of people think means, like, oh, I must go out half an hour a day, I must leave my puppy for, it's not formulaic like that. It's a safety issue. So it's really important that we only do, it's dog-led. That's what I love about it. The dog will decide how much they can cope with. And we start with much smaller things. For example, with babies, we do this automatically. We might take a toy, like a toy, and we will move it out of their sight and bring it back, for example, or we will move behind the door and we will come back. Yeah. We don't think, oh, with the baby, we're going to leave for an hour now and they will get used to it. What we're actually teaching them, and we know that dogs can learn this, is object permanence. That means that when something is out of sight, it doesn't cease to exist.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
In very, very tiny ways. So we don't have to, and also, of course, to make sure that the puppy learns that we are their safe haven and that we can move backwards and forwards, maybe to the kitchen and get stuff, and that they just get used to it like that. But we have to do that in a very fine way. And I think it's a good way to think I must teach my puppy that I'm coming back is better than they have to learn to be alone. Yeah. Because that's usually like, right, I'm going to leave them alone.
Oh, you have such a nice way to describe it. It makes absolutely sense, because we have to teach, we have to help them understand this, because this is not natural for dogs.
No, I don't think it is. And also, we know there are many different causes. Sometimes it can be triggered by, for example, a house move or an event in the family. But some puppies do seem to come hardwired with this. It seems to run in family lines, so it can be a genetic component. There are all sorts of reasons. And we have to look at the individual dog.
So it's not necessarily our fault. It's not we that do something wrong. It doesn't have, we should stop blaming ourselves, or.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, as we, that many, what do you call them? Yeah, or dominance-based traits particularly seem to have a habit of blaming you for everything, us. Of course, you're spoiling the dog, or you're letting the dog on the sofa, or they're sleeping with you on their bed. What do you expect? Or if you say goodbye to your dog, then it's no wonder that you're making such a fuss. Even you come back and you say hello to her. But we know that dogs have greeting rituals that are social. And we know, through a pilot study at least, I don't know how that's going, that dogs seem to do better with a show of affection before we leave and when we come back, because it's natural to them. So all those things don't help at all. We're talking about a phobia, really. It is something that has been saved in the part of the brain that is there to keep us safe, the amygdala, as a danger.
Yeah.
And as I say, I actually think it's a fairly rational danger, because if I'm an animal, I am shut in, I don't know when somebody's going to come back. So there is that. And of course, sometimes they do learn it from other dogs in the household. They may learn it from a mother. Dogs learn by association, of course, so maybe something negative has happened when they were alone. That's totally reasonable that they're afraid they lose confidence. And some dogs are simply traumatized, because sometimes when people say to me, oh, well, they don't really have it, they're just bored or frustrated, I'm thinking, if they saw the dogs that I see, I had a client in England, and before the dog was confiscated, 18 months, the man had left the dog in the house to go on trips for several days at a time as a puppy and a young dog. Imagine that.
Yeah.
So this dog couldn't even well, I had a panic attack. That's what we're talking about. Yeah? When their caregiver even thought about getting up off the sofa. I mean, it was really that bad. And those dogs, of course, need a little bit of help with some medication because they are severely traumatized. So there are many different causes. But the good news is that we can help all those dogs. We can.
Yes, that's my question. Can all dogs be helped?
Well, obviously, a dog is not a robot, because we can't. So no serious behaviorist or trainer would say, I'm going to solve this problem. I can only say that it is an extremely successful method. And in the 3 years when I have been doing this pretty much exclusively at the moment, because I think I mentioned I have an injury, so I couldn't do a lot of other practical work with dogs. Everybody who's actually done the work and hung in there for a few months, because we need to overlay this fear program with a lot of successes, they can help their dog feel really chilled. And I think I said to you beforehand, most trainers are really proud of the fact that they motivate dogs to do things, right? And that's good. I mean, there's nothing, but I'm really proud of the fact that I really can bore them. And I find it quite moving because I'm watching the videos to make sure that they're really, these sessions are under threshold. We never want to trigger the fear, right? And what you're seeing at the beginning is the dog's like, what are you doing? Oh, okay, that's okay. All right. That's what we call a success, is when the dog says, okay, I can do that. Right? But at first they're like, what are you doing? And but after a few days of that, they're going like, oh, we're doing that again, are we? Oh, right.
Yeah.
And after a while, when we give our little signal and we stand up, and we trying to make everything very, very predictable. What we're basically setting up is a safe ritual.
Okay.
We're breaking down the process of leaving into tiny, safe rituals.
Mhm.
And it does not take that long, usually, if a dog just has to learn it and they're not deeply traumatized, for the dog to say, oh, that boring thing. No. And they might even then start to go into another room and they start to be able to disengage from you.
Yeah.
Emotionally, right? And that's the long part of the work, really, is sort of just doing this till because it all has to be voluntarily. You can't train a dog to be safe. You can only help them, facilitate them feel safe,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have really good setups for that, but it's very creative because a lot of other things play into. I hope I'm not giving you too much information at once. I'm so passionate about this. But of course, we're checking at the same time, are all the needs of the dog met? What are the demands on the dog? I found a lot of success with stress reduction measures. For example, a typical comorbidity with separation related issues, we call them, is noise sensitivity.
Mhm.
And I found that stress reduction measures works a lot. Also, of course, pain checks, because we know there's a correlation to pain issues and stuff. So we're doing the whole works behind the scene.
That's why it's so important, is it, to look at this as a holistic, because this will affect the dog in other areas, the rest of the day, when it's not home alone either.
Totally.
Also, yeah.
And this works really, really well because well, I had a client, I really have to laugh about this. They wanted some of my successful clients, two really, really very kind and very nice people. And the first session we had, it was like exactly like this, a Zoom call. And they were talking to me and I was explaining what my bit. And I can see this little Yorkshire Terrier mix who looks like, with the button eyes and a sort of real sort of picture book, batting about the sitting room from one end like this, I'm thinking, what am I going to do here? So I sort of said to them, like, your dog looks a little bit fidgety. And they oh, he's always like that, just he's barging about. And then of course we got is also extremely sound sensitive. He would react to the neighbors, to children playing in cars and dogs walking past. And so, well, we reduced the amount of high octane or high arousal stuff that he was getting in dog parks and stuff, and more stiffy walks, and the way we do things. And I was even amazed at within a few days he was sleeping properly. And now it didn't take very long. He reacts to no more noise, except for one Rottweiler. And he knows he's coming. Nobody knows how he knows he's coming. And then he goes and barks at him, and then and that's it. So he can now take himself out of it. So what I've noticed is that dogs who go through this training with me learn to self-regulate better. Instead of just jumping up and barking at whatever and not thinking, they're also learning to self-regulate better. Yeah. So yes, it plays into everything. Yeah.
So what should you not do? What are some of the most common mistakes we do when we realize, or when we, well, both actually, before we realize there is a problem and after? If you can give any examples.
Well, the first thing that we really do need to do, and often people don't, they will claim that their dog is okay because when they come home, the dog greets them normally. But unfortunately, we cannot tell from that. So we do need to set up a camera, and we make sure that they're not showing any signs of stress or fear, which can be anything from yawning or drooling or freezing or pacing, but it can, of course, escalate to things like self-harm, escape behaviors, anything like that. Right? So we need to check that out really well. If we suspect that the dog is struggling for any reason, it's really easy to play it down and say, oh, they're just frustrated, or oh, they're just bored, or oh, they're just this or the other. But fact is, if they're displaying body language like that, we need to respect that. Yeah, that's how they tell you. So that's the first thing. And if they do show that, then the first thing is not to leave them on their own, to make sure that they are with somebody they feel comfortable and safe with. Otherwise, you are just deepening the fear program.
So you can't do the training and helping them in the weekends and then go to work on Monday and leave them home alone again. You need to find someone to be with your dog, or to take your dog with you if possible, even.
Yes, I mean, the first big challenge perhaps for everybody, but it is to manage this, to create a support network.
Yeah.
But it's great for the dog's confidence anyway. It's a good skill. We call that spreading the love. So, and it needs a bit of time invested. You can't just sort of say, here's my dog, look after them for the morning and they'll feel happy. You have to invest. I use enrichment for that, for example, building up positive associations with people. So that's really important, not to leave your dog while they are to suffer further fear episodes. Then one very sad and common mistake is that often people are recommended to practice putting on jackets and shoes 1,000 times a day, taking them off, or picking up their keys, anything that we call a departure cue, anything that has become for the dog what do you call it? A cue, a stress sign that they associate with you leaving, right? You don't want to practice that, because all you're doing is triggering the fear without solving the problem for them. Yeah. So it sounds kind of logical because it's first in the sequence. I pick up my key and my dog freaks out, so I need to solve that first. But in actual fact, if we hide the key in our pocket, or we put the jacket in the car, and that we're not triggering, because for the dog, if you look at it from the dog's point of view, it's making everything really unpredictable. It's like, are you going? No, you're not going. Okay. Are you going? Oh no, you're not going. Yes. Are you going? Yes, you are going. So, and we know that, and we know this by common sense, really, in empathy, that if you're afraid of something, the quality of predictability is extremely important to you. So that's something. Other trainers have unfortunately also recommended making things unpredictable. I don't know why they think that's going to help, but come through this door, leave through that door, go for different lengths of time. Recently, just 2 days ago, somebody told me they were told to go outside the door and come in through the garden, but we don't want the dog to feel that they can't get a handle on this. We're trying to set up a safe ritual that they know you're coming back all the time. Yeah. So those
What
are
about treats or giving them a chew or something?
Well, the thing is, studies have shown that the process of desensitization, that is breaking the process of leaving down into such tiny chunks that it doesn't trigger this fear, is a much more effective way of treatment. It's analog to the way I understand that humans are treated for phobias in human psychology. So if you use food, which is a sort of counter conditioning, you're trying to rely on the principle that you're coupling something unpleasant with something pleasant, like food. If you have a real fear, then usually the dog will not eat anyway. But if I was in a room with a load of poisonous vipers, I'm not going to be saying, oh, Lisbeth is brilliant. What a nice tiramisu, nice viper, right? But also that the practical thing is that you can only give the food, usually, unless you're going to use a machine, before you leave. And I tell you that there are not few dogs who have become impossible to feed. I have somebody in my Facebook group who said that they tried this on the recommendation of people, and the dog was so terrified of food.
Yeah.
Classical Pavlov, you're actually coupling food with something aversive.
Yeah.
We don't use food. We're not also trying to train a behavior. We're trying to facilitate a skill.
Yeah.
The dog will learn, and they need to learn at their own pace, and they do learn at their own pace. And the fact that we give them back the control, what my clients are actually learning is to read their dog so subtly for the very, very tiniest signs of any kind of like blinking or a little bit of white in the eye, anything, right? And we stop. So we're always respecting the dog's body language, right? So sometimes, some days you get a little bit further than others, but every success counts. Every time the dog, in our imagination, is sort of saying, oh, I can do that.
Yeah.
That's what we want. And neurologically, we're overlaying this fear program, if you like, with successes. We're like, I can do this, I can do this. And when the dog is kind of saying that, and these synapses are building, I'm not actually a neuroscientist, but after a while, this will overlay, in fact, the fear program. Yeah, it can break through sometimes, but these are sort of complications in the process. But on the whole, this works really well. It has to be done very carefully, and if you're going to spend money and all that dedication on helping your dog, please get professional help. Really, it's not rocket science. Nothing's rocket science once you know how to do it. Yeah, but it's very difficult to do on your own.
And it's so important to actually do it the right way to help the dog so it's not feeling fearful anymore. because we can always force dogs or animals to do so. We can tie them up, or we can lock them in, or we can ignore the problem, or put them in a room where they can't chew on things, but that is not solving anything. It's just making the dog's life worse, I'm claiming.
It's fairly traumatizing.
Yeah.
I mean, if we had a child who is afraid of the dark, we would never think, okay, no problem, I'm going to put my child in the dark for an hour every day and they'll get used to it.
Mm.
But as you know, the opposite's going to happen, not only because fear becomes more complex.
Yeah.
Not only are they afraid of the actual thing, they start to anticipate. They're in constant tension about when is it going to happen again. They lose trust in the people who are doing this to them.
Mm-hmm.
They become helpless
Absolutely.
and traumatized and shut down,
Yeah.
which some people may perhaps think has done the trick. But it was David Bowie who said, who was asked once, what is the worst kind of life that you can imagine? And his answer was a life in fear. That is the worst. And we really, really need to help our dogs be free of that fear.
I love that you are citing David Bowie, by the way.
Yeah.
Um, we need to make to end this nice chat. And I already warned you that I will invite you to a Facebook Live sometime in the new year, because this is a very interesting topic and we can help a lot of dogs. How can you help? If anyone listening to this, I will post the links to your website and more information just below. It's probably below this film, this recording. But do you do online consultations, Rosie? How do you do if anyone living not in Austria, how can they get your help?
Well, luckily, studies have actually shown that it is probably one of the few areas in dog world which are more effective online. Because if I'm standing in the sitting room with your dog, then I'm playing the dog sitter. So all my programs about this are online. Usually I start with an 8-week program because of all the variables. So we're looking at the dog's needs, and some dogs do better in the morning than the afternoon. There are lots of things. I even have heard of a dog who does better if their caregiver leaves with their sport bag, right? So we don't care. We're looking for the easiest
Yeah.
way, right?
And this is individual, right? So it's not one fits all. It's not a course where everyone is doing the same thing. So everyone is leaving with a sports bag.
No, no, it isn't. It's not formulaic at all. Obviously, we do have exercises, but we tailor it to your house.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, some dogs, if they do find themselves reacting a lot to the street and stuff, they might be better off in the sitting room or something like that. We're looking for where the dog feels safe and where the dog can rest, and things like that. And then I take people online through the exercise, and I usually record that, of course, with their permission, because then they can see what I'm watching, and that is I'm watching the dog.
Yeah.
Like this. And but with my video off, so I'm not disturbing the dog. And then I can play back to them what I'm looking for when we stop this. And then we have an app, a private app, which I then put in their individual training plan.
Mhm.
And so when they do that, we ask people to practice 5 times a week, half an hour. That's quite doable, actually. And it's very effective. It's much over that doesn't really bring a lot of, but under that doesn't really bring enough. And I look at that every single day because I'm tracking behavior patterns and everything that plays into how what makes it easier for this dog. And we meet up once a week per Zoom. And people say to me sometimes, I thought this was going to be really boring, but I have got to know my dog. I've never felt closer to my dog because I can see everything that he's telling me or she's telling me. And people, I'm chuffed to say, people do stay with me for months. And they also have WhatsApp or Signal contact to me, because they will start to ask verifying questions like, could I have continued here, or should I have stopped a bit earlier?
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Oh, my little dog wants to get out. Well, he's not. He's actually quite a big dog. He wants to go out.
Thank you so much. This was a really, really nice chat. And I will see you for sure. I will see you again on a Facebook Live where people might even want to, you know, ask questions. We can do a session about that as well, I think.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And happy Christmas coming
You
up.
too. Yeah. Thank you.
On cue.